Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we've got a very special guest, and that is Yago, who's one of the core contributors to BitcoinOS. We know we've been discussing all the latest in the best Bitcoin protocols and who's scaling and who's using different technologies. So I'm really keen to pick your brain today. Welcome to the channel, Yago.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to give everyone at home a bit of your quick background, how you got into crypto, and what led you to contributing to BitcoinOS?
So I was lucky enough to find out about Bitcoin fairly early. In 2011, I was working on machine learning, which basically evolved into AI.
Yeah,
And I was reading extensively in network science. I came across this paper called the Satoshi White Paper, and it blew my mind. It completely sort of screwed up all my life plans. I've been in Bitcoin ever since.
yeah,
Been working full time in Bitcoin since 2013, and have helped create the first sort of lobby group for Bitcoin in the US. Worked with a number of the large exchanges, set up the first remittance company using Bitcoin. Helped build Sovryn into the first and largest DeFi ecosystem for Bitcoin. And over the last few years, have been researching what I think is, from a technological perspective, the absolute holy grail of Bitcoin, which is the ability to bring programmability to Bitcoin without having to make any changes to Bitcoin's core code.
fantastic. So we've had a few different projects on lately that have been experimenting with ZK proofs and that style of technology, which is what you guys are using too. Do you want to maybe expand on that for people at home? I think our audience is pretty familiar with the fact that Bitcoin wasn't very programmable in its initial years, and then we've had Taproot and other upgrades since then. So do you want to maybe explain why it's so exciting for you and what these new technologies and computer science mathematics are going to allow to happen?
Sure. So, I mean, I've sort of seen your channel talk a lot about Bitcoin DeFi, a lot about Bitcoin rollups, hundreds of projects, right? There's probably 100 rollup projects out there. There's maybe, 1,000 plus DeFi projects.
Yeah.
And the thing is, none of them are actually Bitcoin rollups or Bitcoin DeFi as we would usually talk about, right?
Okay.
None of them can trustlessly use Bitcoin. Most of them aren't even secured by Bitcoin, right? So if you think about BitLayer, it's sort of like its own chain, has no actual relationship with Bitcoin. Bob is rolling up to Ethereum, and that is the current state of play for the Bitcoin ecosystem. And it's right, as you were saying, Bitcoin for developers is extremely limited. It's limited in the amount of data you have and the kind of programmability you can do, uh, 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 and in all sorts of other esoteric ways. So the holy grail is to figure out, can we take all of these different systems and actually secure them with Bitcoin? That's what they all want to achieve, but that sort of holy grail piece is missing.
Yeah.
So what would that require? What it would require is the ability to take any kind of computation and prove it as a zero knowledge proof, secure that zero knowledge proof as a Bitcoin transaction, validate the zero knowledge proof on Bitcoin, and execute any transaction that you wanted, moving Bitcoin around, creating new tokens, anything.
Yeah.
So at the core right now of this entire sort of space race to to build Bitcoin is this rocket booster that everyone's missing, which is the ZK proof.
Yeah.
And what we've been focused on for the last few years is figuring out, is it even possible to verify ZK on Bitcoin? Would you need a hard fork? Would you need a soft fork? Can you do it without any fork at all? And the dream is to be able to do it without any fork at all. So we've been funding a bunch of researchers. We've been had sort of like our own research team working on this, and then in April, after we'd figured out that actually it was more than just theoretically possible to verify ZK on Bitcoin, and that we out any changes to Bitcoin Core. We published a white paper. And then just a few months later, for the first time ever, at Bitcoin Nashville, we demonstrated this actually happening on, on Bitcoin mainnet. And not only that, we created the first true smart contract on Bitcoin We managed to lock Bitcoin and Ordinals in that smart contract, and we managed to control that ZK contract, that smart contract using ZK proofs, and send Bitcoin to an arbitrary address. And so in block 853.626, Bitcoin entered into a new era where for the first time it can be a truly fully programmable system.
Amazing. I want to just give people maybe a dumbed down version of what the ZK technology is. So yes, for people might be familiar with the block size, and we can only fit so much information and transactions in a Bitcoin block. How would you describe for people the way that this ZK technology can really minimize what goes into a Bitcoin block to allow all this to happen?
Right. So let's say you want to go to a bar. You have to be, I don't know, in Australia, I suspect 18 in order to drink. And they'll want your ID, and you'll give them this card, and it's got all of your information, everything that you've ever done with, where you live, what your age is, who you've slept with, everything. Right. This is suboptimal. It's suboptimal in two ways. First of all, it's suboptimal for your privacy, but it's also suboptimal in terms of the amount of data being processed, right? The bouncer, maybe he's had a long night, needs to figure out what he's looking at. Now, imagine you could take that and you could just scan a machine that has a red light and a green light. And if you're over 18, green light goes on. If you're under 18, red light goes on. If the system is false, if the card that you've given is a fake card, red light goes on. And so the only piece of information they're getting is red light or green light. And so you've taken all of this information that you've been giving the bouncer and condensed it down to the one single proof that you actually require. So ZK does two things. It provides privacy and it provides condensation, right? It compresses the required information. We are right now mostly using the compressive aspect. So what we will do is we will take a very big compute. You can imagine an entire chain, right, of transactions, Bitcoin DeFi transactions, a whole roll-up built around Bitcoin, many thousands of transactions. We then compress all of that transactional activity into a ZK proof, and we prove it on Bitcoin. And we can then verify that this transactional activity happened and actually secure this transactional activity on Bitcoin, but providing a very, very small amount of data. In fact, the amount of data that we provide is smaller than a standard Bitcoin transaction. So this is a very, very powerful scaling mechanism that we can bring to Bitcoin.
Fantastic. So I want to get your thoughts on what you guys have been able to learn from Ethereum and Ethereum scaling, optimism, Arbitrum, that kind of thing. And through these interviews, we've seen the full spectrum of Bitcoin maximalists that don't believe in ordinals or runes or scaling or sidechains or anything. Or I guess what you've described, your technology is pretty close, as I've heard so far, as a pure Bitcoin technology that's not going to upset the maxis in the way it works. So what are your thoughts on that whole spectrum of, hey, we've been able to learn from other chains and other technologies, and it sounds like you believe you've got the best so far as you've outlined. What are your thoughts on all that debate and how that's all playing out?
Well, I think it's lovely. It's fantastic that we have so many other systems that are experimenting. A lot of the technology that has turned zero knowledge proofs, ZK proofs, into something practical that you could use was developed because there was excitement around it and significant funding for it in the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yes.
I think also Ethereum sort of acts as a testnet for Bitcoin, for what a programmable Bitcoin can be, because we get to learn from their successes, but also from their failures. So I have probably an hour of conversation I could have with you on what those learnings are. Yeah. My overall feeling is that we're going to see rollups in Bitcoin, but that ultimately rollups are a little bit oversold. Most transactions are not going to occur in rollups. And the reason is actually quite simple. Think about what the ability to prove any compute on a chain means. It means that you could basically be running something like a centralized exchange, right? You don't even need an AMM. You could run a centralized exchange as verifiable, provable, and secured by Bitcoin computation.
Yeah.
Where you move your Bitcoin in and out of the exchange process trustlessly. And so what we're going to see is applications, ZK applications. And ultimately, I think the entire web is going to reconstitute itself around these kinds of ZK proofs, because you're able to, verify any kind of computation is happening correctly. Any algorithm is running correctly. So I think rollups are going to be part of that story, and they're going to be sort of the middle of the story, right? What a rollup basically is well, we've got this world of many chains. We now know we can scale the chains with ZK. Well, what do? We put chains on top of chains. But I actually think that chain on top of chains and then apps on top of the chains on top of chains is a little bit redundant. And what we're ultimately going to see is the apps being secured directly by the base layer, and or what I usually call the settlement layer. And I think of all of the potential settlement layers out there, Bitcoin is by far the best, almost by mistake.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that, but I know your time is short, so let's
No, we can go as long as you like, as long as it's interesting, and it sure is so far. So along that line of thought, what are your thoughts on tokenomics, and is Bitcoin OS need a token, or as you say, if that app model ultimately is the one that's reducing back to Bitcoin itself, is it those apps that the tokenomics is more important for? So how does your software and your protocol fit in? What are your thoughts on tokens being good or bad?
Sure. So the benefit of a token here is the ability to create a platform or a network embedded into Bitcoin, right? Basically create these sort of super powered nodes, which are able to take all of this compute, convert it into ZK, verify, execute it on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have a world of rollups, dApps, other chains that are interacting trustlessly and securing themselves on Bitcoin. And you need a network of nodes that are processing into Bitcoin all of that compute. And to make sure that they're all operating as part of a network. In other words, you're not relying on a specific one, but you can rely on an entire network that is operating according to the same set of rules, is always available. For that, you need to have some kind of system of staking. And that is part of what the Boss token will provide. It will provide you the ability to be that kind of node. It will mean that for you, any computation that you pass into Bitcoin is going to be trustless. You're not even relying on some other node to do it for you. And it also means that Bitcoin is entering into a new and exciting phase where you've got Bitcoin miners who are mining the settlement transaction, but you've also got an operating system built around Bitcoin, which basically provides a whole new way of thinking about Bitcoin or BTC as a gas token. And the way you earn those gas fees paid out in BTC is is by running a BOS or a BitcoinOS node.
Fantastic. Do you want to dive into a little bit more what stage you guys are at? You mentioned you've proven this technology's work at that specific block, and where are you in that roadmap, and what's upcoming next for you guys?
Right. So we've crossed the Rubicon, right? We've gone from a phase where Bitcoin can do very little. Basically, you can hold Bitcoin or you can transfer Bitcoin, and that's it.
Yeah.
And we've crossed the Rubicon into uh, a truly programmable world for Bitcoin. But for that to become valuable, there's a lot of work still to do. We need to, head south. We need to take over Rome. We need to, and so what that means is we need to build out the operating system that is going to allow devs to functionally use this and build trustless bridges on Bitcoin, build rollups on Bitcoin, build native privacy on Bitcoin, build programmable tokens on Bitcoin, write any compute to Bitcoin, build Web3 on Bitcoin or Web5, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So that every computing system that you can think of has an operating system. With Ethereum or Solana, that operating system is implicit. It's basically built into the VM. It's hard coded into the system, but Bitcoin doesn't have such a thing. And so we're building that now. And where we are in that process is we've proven out the core primitive, the core basic building block of it. We've now recently open sourced that work. Soon we will be open sourcing work which allows you to have these agents or nodes that are running. And then we're working with a number of different partners. So, a lot of the different rollup projects and DeFi projects have already announced that they're going to be building on BitcoinOS, and there's probably more that we'll announce over the coming weeks. They're going to then need to demonstrate these use cases. So we are rushing right now, making really progress, which is much faster than I was expecting, towards being able to have a mainnet early next year and really, take this crossing the Rubicon moment into from just sort of having crossed the threshold into a truly sort of new paradigm for Bitcoin.
Fantastic. Well, we'll definitely have to get you back on when that mainnet's live, and I'll do some tutorials for you guys once that is up and about. But I think you mentioned runes or ordinals before. What are your thoughts on that space? Is just another, as you said, Bitcoin was just for transactions. Is that other step forward? Some people are seeing it as a bit of fun, and other people are saying, hey, this is going to be the next NFT or Memecoin Supercycle with these types of things. So what are your thoughts on that space?
I think both of those attitudes are completely missing the absolutely jaw-dropping impact of having the ability to create tokens on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because what Bitcoin is it's a ledger. It's weird. We don't talk about that anymore. But that was always, and even today, is the primary purpose of any blockchain is to create a trusted sort of decentralized ledger. And why is a ledger so important? It's because it creates digital property rights, right? If you can digitize the property rights and decentralize them, then you have truly secure property rights. And really the system that is most optimized for this is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, we're moving into every single day, we move further and further into a world where most economic activity is digital.
Yeah.
And the most important way to secure property rights is on the internet, so that they're borderless, available to anyone, can interact with other systems. So having these sort of early versions of tokenization on Bitcoin is extremely important, because it takes Bitcoin from a very, very special case where it's basically an entire system generating just one kind of property, right? One kind of asset, which is BTC, to a system which is like the internet or the global ledger for all digital assets. Yeah. The problem with Ordinals, runes, BRC20 is that they're still limited by what Bitcoin can do yesterday.
Yeah.
So what we're working to do is, with BitcoinOS, allow you to have truly programmable tokens, right? Tokens that can be issued. Like you could create a stable coin where if you put in $1 collateral or Bitcoin collateral, a new one gets issued. You can't do that with runes. Yeah. We can create property rights where, if an ordinal represents a house, and it gets locked up because it's under some kind of mortgage, right? People are borrowing against it. It cannot move until the mortgage gets paid. You cannot do that today with ordinals.
Yeah.
So this level of asset management, right? What is programmability? It's rules around asset management. So right now we have this powerful ledger. We've now upgraded it that it can have many, many different kinds of assets. And now we're adding the final layer, which is the ability to build asset management into the system. And with that, Bitcoin becomes this universal asset management system.
Yeah, I want to drill down on that even further, because you've got me really thinking. At the time of recording, I've just got another strike on YouTube, so now I can't upload this video for a week. So when you say, let's not forget Bitcoin's a ledger, and we've had projects like Steam It and other things pop up over the past, do you see Bitcoin being that ledger, that backbone for content creators to put it up on these platforms that have no censorship? It's there forever, embedded in the Bitcoin blockchain. Is that the ultimate vision, to have the entire internet, all assets, everything, that data, if everything goes well, with Bitcoin as that backbone ledger? Do you think that's fair?
Sure. So Bitcoin itself has only 4 megabytes of data every 10 minutes. Yep. You're not going to upload your entire video to Bitcoin mainnet. That would be extremely expensive and kind of insane.
Yes.
So instead, what we are seeing is the emergence of data systems being built on Bitcoin, which are secured by Bitcoin and maintain sort of any amount of data that you want.
Yeah.
So what I suspect the future looks like is Alex creates a video. That video gets registered to Bitcoin. So the ownership of the video is in Bitcoin. The actual data of the video is secured in a data layer, which is basically a Bitcoin layer 2.
Yeah.
And now Alex's video is available to anyone, anywhere. And so different systems like it, and then what you will do is you'll basically give permission to YouTube or whatever the future of YouTube is, to TikTok or whatever the future of TikTok is. And instead of them keeping all of the data and having the ownership of the video, which sucks for you, right? You will maintain ownership. The data will remain outside of their hands, and they basically become a front end for distribution. And the reason this will happen is because users will want it, because they're tired of being advertised to, they're tired of being manipulated, they're tired of algorithms fucking with their minds, and they're tired of censorship. And creators will want this because they want to retain the ownership of the stuff that they've created. Right? YouTube monetizes your video and gives you, here's a taste of what we made, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That's not great for you. So the final question is, will this happen on Bitcoin? And my answer is almost certainly. And the reason is, you as Alex, right? You know that you're creating basically a retirement program for yourself, right? Because this content that you create has a long tail of evergreen income, right? Now, are you going to want to secure that evergreen income on a system which we don't even know if it's going to be around in 5 years, like Solana, or a system which we have no idea what it even looks like in 5 years, like Ethereum? Or are you going to secure it on the most reliable, stable, permanent property rights management system in the world? And I suspect, you can give your own answer, but I suspect you're going to want to do it on Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the dream. And eloquently put, that was a great explanation. So thank you. Is there anything else? I can tell you've got a giga brain in there, and I'm absolutely loving it, Yago. So what else do you think maybe doesn't get spoken about enough? We've spoken about some pretty big philosophical stuff, as well as getting into some technical stuff. What do you want the average audience out there that likes their Bitcoin and crypto, but maybe doesn't understand how significant some of these upgrades are, or just the long-term vision, or political impacts of Bitcoin? What do you think is most important to you?
Well, I think maybe one of the most important things I've already said, which is that this entire industry is a property rights industry. That's what we're building. And I think that I think that the crypto industry is an industry which does not understand itself. Because if you go and you read the news or read the blog posts or go on Twitter, everyone is talking about which chain this and which chain that, and it makes no sense. Users don't care about chains. Users care about assets. Users don't care about smart contracts. Users care about managing their property, right?
Yeah.
And we need to flip the way we think about Bitcoin. We need to flip the way we think about crypto from being about the technology to being about the assets. And when you do that, you stop talking about chains. You start talking about ledgers. You start talking about which ledger provides the most secure property rights. You start talking about which assets are going to have the highest degree of security and longevity, and which ones give me the most control over those assets myself. It's a completely different way of thinking and talking that I think we need to shift into. I'll go further in two ways. First of all, keep on hearing people talk about the next bringing, mass adoption, the next billion users. Now, I want to see the next billion users. I want to see everyone using a decentralized form of property rights. But for your bags, this doesn't matter. Doesn't matter almost at all. And the reason is The next billion people who are going to adopt Bitcoin, they're poor. They have hardly any value. 80% of the world's net worth is controlled by, the top 5 or so percent of the population. And so really what matters is, where is the next $1 trillion going to go? Where is the next $10 trillion going to go? And the world is giving us a very, very strong signal that the smart money, right, the money that's interested in 30-year bonds, 35-year-old mortgages, inheritance, long-term savings, large-scale infrastructure projects that pay themselves out over 50 years, right? Real finance, which is a multi-decade or multi-generational endeavor,
Yeah.
it cares about is Bitcoin, right? The Ethereum ETF has gone nowhere. Bitcoin ETF has seen 21 billion in inflows. That is going to keep adding zeros to it. So from the perspective of adoption, we're once again making a mistake. It's not about user adoption. It's about asset adoption. We're an asset industry. Yeah, so I think those are two flips. And the third big myth that I think exists in the crypto space is that chains matter at all. The vast majority of chains are going to disappear, and the reason they're going to disappear is because of the information or the technology that we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation. The ability to take any compute, reduce it to a ZK proof, and secure it on another chain. The reason we've built out all of these chains is because the only way that we had to run any computational activity on Ethereum or Avalanche or Cardano or whatever was we had to go and build out a whole chain for it. That is no longer necessary.
Yeah.
Now, most developers even haven't realized that. But we are, over the next few years, going to shift to a world where the chains get unbundled, the applications interact directly through these ZK proofs. Everything is at instant speed and infinite execution throughput. Scale, like Solana talked about, becomes irrelevant because everyone has it. And then the question becomes really, which ledger do you want to use? Because that becomes the binding glue.
Yeah.
And my view is that there's going to be relatively few ledgers that actually have any importance whatsoever. And we may end up with a situation like we ended up with the internet, where we had thousands of internets, right, that were built out, but ended up with only just one. We may end up with just one distributed global ledger. And my bet would be that that would be Bitcoin.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And even just in these interviews and the networking over the past year or two, we've seen a lot of Ethereum developers now jumping back into the Bitcoin space. And I think we've spoken about the importance of Bitcoin being the gold standard long term, but I also think, or would you agree that speculation short term, like we've already talked about, I guess, Zcash comes along and they play with that zero knowledge technology. Ethereum comes along, plays with smart contracts. But I think, like you said, this is one of the reasons why alts aren't performing that well these days, and these alternate chains are probably going to go by the wayside because Bitcoin wasn't able to do that, and the speculators and the average investor doesn't understand that, I don't think, just yet.
Well, actually, if you want another sort of controversial opinion that I have, it's that the reason that a lot of these tokens are not, and alts sort of are not performing well, is actually mostly, it's not because people understand sort of where the technology is heading, but it's mostly because we gave up on the free market. So the most free market we ever had, and you're hearing this from a Bitcoiner, the freest market we ever had was the ICO market of 2016, 2017. Anyone could invest in anything. Anyone could suggest a project and take investment from anyone in the world. It was remarkable. Now, a lot of scams, a lot of Ponzi's, a lot of bullshit, a lot of vaporware. And yet, what did the freest market we've ever seen produce, right? Well, Ethereum was an ICO. Binance was an ICO. Chainlink was an ICO. Cardano was an ICO.
MakerDAO,
MakerDAO was an ICO. Aave was an ICO. Okay, so let's say that 99.9% of all of that was scams, and all of that went to zero, which isn't exactly the case. But let's be hard, right?
Yeah.
And let's say that throughout that ICO period, $20 billion was lost because of all of this nonsense. Well, look at what it produced. It produced probably on the order of $600 billion in returns, right? So 20 to 600. That outperforms Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That is the power of unleashing free markets. You unleash chaos. There is no engine for prosperity more powerful than the chaos of the free market. And that is something that we've given up on, because now the VCs come and they do their whole shtick, and then the KOLs come and they do their whole shtick. So I think one of the best things we can do for Bitcoin, and this is something we want to do with BitcoinOS, is unleash the free market now. We've got free market, BTC, free money, BTC. We're building BitcoinOS, the free market for that free money. And we're going to unleash what is going to be the craziest, most chaotic, most industrialized shitcoin universe in the world. And it's going to create more prosperity than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think with the geopolitical backdrop, we've seen if you have any central point of failure, like when we saw Pavel of Telegram get arrested, people are starting to wake up that one guy or one key holder or whatever can shut down a whole project pretty quickly. So that's why we have to have everything fully decentralized. And I definitely agree with what you said about the ICOs. And what we noticed at the time was, yeah, there was a huge bubble, but people woke up and people themselves go, no, I got burned on that ICO. I'm more skeptical. And people started digging in a bit deeper and checking out the tokenomics. People were learning from their mistakes, which I think was really good.
Exactly. We unleashed the chaos on the free market on a population that had been domesticated for the last 50 or 60 years not to think for themselves. And so they had no defensive systems, they had no immune system for the scams. That is changing rapidly. And the longer the free market runs, the more sophisticated investors, even simple investors, will become. So we've only scratched the surface of how powerful this can be.
Yeah, and the other thing you reminded me of then was, the dot-com bubble and pets.com and the madness then, and then the $1 trillion of value that's it's created when 99% of those coins popped during that bubble as well. But
Yeah.
any final thoughts or things we haven't touched on? This has been absolutely brilliant, so I appreciate it.
Well, I try to write about some of this stuff sometimes. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you can follow me on Twitter.
I'll put all the
I
links
have
in the
a
description
column.
down below, as always, guys, to follow Yago. Yeah.
Beyond that, I definitely think taking a step back and sort of, if you are interested in this space, by far the best sort of conservative, low risk investment you can make is Bitcoin. I know most people don't think about Bitcoin as a low risk investment, but it is, because it is the most conservative type of private property you can own, and right now is about to get an entire parallel free market attached to it. It is also where institutional and traditional finance is going to merge with crypto.
Yeah.
So I think the big winner here is BTC. And then if you're interested in digging deeper, and if you have the time and you are willing to do your own research, I think there are a few spaces to be looking at which are super interesting. I think ZK is super interesting, and it's going to massively debundle sort of L1s. I'm pretty bearish over the medium term on this whole altcoin space right now. Yeah. I'm very bullish on infrastructure that is building towards this ZK driven space that we're building in. I'm extremely bullish on what is happening in Bitcoin. It is the fastest growing developer ecosystem in crypto right now, and that is usually a very, very powerful signal. And then I think helping to power all of this will be the operating system, BitcoinOS.
Oh, finally, I might pick your brain on meme coins, as Murad's been talking a lot about this in Supercycle. I agree with a lot of what he said. One thing I disagree with, because I think every cycle it tends to be a new chain, and that's why I think the biggest opportunity is probably on Bitcoin or Bitcoin L2s for a lot of meme coins. And I now view meme coins as a cultural or even a culty way to get messages out. And I think with what we're seeing around the world at the moment, a lot of conspiracies are coming true, and people are trying to bring issues to the forefront of the attention that the media refuse to cover. And that's kind of where I maybe see meme coins getting a real political movement and that kind of thing behind them. What are your thoughts on meme coins?
Well, I agree with most of Murad's analysis, and I think that pretty much all of the tokens, including Bitcoin, are meme coins. They all represent tokens that they're not based on sort of a discounted cash flow analysis of future revenue, right? There's a model which is much more powerful than that in many ways. So they all have an aspect of being a meme coin. Ethereum sort of like is a meme. Solana is a meme. What is the Sol token? It's the meme of this fast chain
Yeah.
of the meme coin chain, right? Where I think Murad misses the mark, and sort of like this whole sort of meme hype thing misses the mark, is they talk about cults. They talk about the best memes being cults. The only cultish aspect that you get out of a pure meme coin is the same kind of cult you get around a Ponzi scheme. It's the cult of um, if I got in early, I want to dump on someone else, and if I didn't get in early, I have an anxiety that I can't dump on someone else. So it's the greed and anxiety are really the only two emotions
Yeah.
that cult has. But there are much more powerful cults which go bigger, which have longevity, and those are cults which actually provide meaning to people's lives and value. Bitcoin is the perfect example. Bitcoin is by far the best meme coin because Bitcoin, besides the meme, also it doesn't just talk about the meme; it delivers the meme. It delivers privacy. It delivers freedom. It delivers an asset you can finally control. Right?
Yes.
Ethereum actually delivered on this meme of building, a global sort of universally accessible computer.
Yeah.
And so the level of cultishness that you see, right? Ethereum has maxis, Bitcoin has maxis. We will not see that happen with any meme coin that doesn't deliver something important. And so I would be happy to say, BitcoinOS, the boss token will be a meme token.
Yeah.
And the meme that it's going to represent is building the free market that is accessible to anyone, everywhere, forever, and built on the world's best money. That is a meme with substance, and that's why you're going to see the biggest returns in the meme coins that actually deliver something of value.
Brilliant place to finish, Yago. You've been a gentleman and a scholar, as they say. I've really enjoyed this interview. Links to follow all Yago and BitcoinOS work down below, and we'll have to check in again in future, mate. So all the best with your endeavors.
Thank you very much. It was great. I really enjoyed this.
Cool. Thanks, guys.